Welcome back. It's me, Lou. And I forgot what I was going to say. All right, so welcome back. It's me, Lou. What am I? I'm like going senile. Okay, welcome back. It's me, Lou. I'm here for another action figure unboxing and review. Today we are taking a look from McFarlane Toys, the DC Superpowers, uh, the Batman Who Laughs. New for 22, Nouveau por 22, Nuevo para 22. Truth be told, I hate the Batman Who Laughs. I think visually he's an amazing looking character, but I hate anything that has to deal with like the multiverse. I hate all the death metal Batman stuff, and I don't know. I think it's really cool though that they're tapping into a modern character and throwing it into the retro line. Um, and the figure so far, it looks. This is probably the best looking figure of all the figures in the line so far, but it's the character I like. I don't know. I hate this guy. I can't stand him. Let's get started. This figure belongs to Wave 2. In my neck of the woods, Wave 2 is really hard to find. Wave 2 includes the Batman Who Laughs and the Flash, and I think they re-released Batman and Superman in Wave 2 also. Here's a bio on the Batman Who Laughs. Go ahead, read it, knock yourself out. Here's the entirety of all the figures out so far. We have Superman, Batman, Flash, Darkseid, John Stewart, and the Batman Who Laughs. And I've reviewed every figure so far except for this and Darkseid. Alright, my first impression of this action figure as I'm handling it is that he feels out of place. And I'm not just saying that because he's a modern character and it's a retro line, but it feels like they put the most care and attention into this guy. This guy seems like they gave him a bigger budget. He seems like he's designed a lot better than the other figures. He's definitely more detailed than the other figures, and that's where it kind of throws me off. I kind of feel like they should have like simplified and dumbed down his design so he feels more aesthetically like an 80s action figure. I mean, you look at him, clearly this looks like it was sculpted like just the other day. It looks really, really nice. You pull out, for example, Batman here, and Batman doesn't look too hot next to the Batman Who Laughs. This figure looks amazing. It has a nice plastic like coattail that's sculpted, and it's a nice plastic. It's really well done. Batman here is stuck with the cloth cape. So I kind of feel like as cool as this figure is, as well designed as it is, I feel like it's out of place because they should have done more to make it feel like a retro figure. Like, instead of having this plastic coattail, they should have had a cloth goods one. They could have easily minimized the amount of wrinkles and folds in his costume also, just to dumb him down a little. Likewise, like this guy, his harnesses and strap, it's so incredibly detailed. Whereas Batman's, it's very basic and generic. They should have taken the same approach here. So it's weird. This guy is incredibly detailed. He looks fantastic, but he feels aesthetically out of place, if you know what I'm saying. He doesn't look as generic as these older figures. These older figures, they look very generic. They all look like they're, cut from the same mold. But then when you bring this guy in, it feels like this guy belongs to like a different line of action figures. But, just look at it. It's amazing. The detail is great. He has the teeth. He has the crazy, like, spiked visor. These are sharp and pointy. So if you have, like, a little child, don't let them handle this figure because they could, like, literally poke their eyes out with this. It's a harder plastic. It's really pointy, and I'm sure if you press hard enough, you can actually cause bleeding with it. So just a word of caution. I do like this. It's nice, but like I said, this doesn't feel retro. This feels like something you'd find like on a late 90s Batman figure, with a harder cape. That's where I kind of feel like they fell short. They should have went for the retro and gone with the cloth goods. But, it's a fantastic looking figure. It just feels really, really different than the other ones in the presentation. So with that being said, let's take a look at it. It looks great. The black is a nice shade. It's not too deep. It's just right. Wonderful details. They even sculpted his friggin' boots. Look at that. They gave him all this detail on his boots. And then everyone else is so generic. You know what I mean? It's like, these feel like throwback figures. This does not feel like a throwback figure. The only thing that's throwback about it is his articulation. He doesn't have a whole lot. Man, I just poked my fingers. Yeah, like I said, be careful. All these things are pretty sharp. And his head rotates. And every time I want to rotate his head, all these spikes are just poking my fingers, and it hurts. So his head rotates. His arms rotate. His legs kick out, and the knees bend. So that's the extent of his articulation. Really well done, though. It's like I said, this figure is amazing. It almost kind of reminds me of like Pinhead and all his buddies from like Hellraiser, which I'm sure is probably the inspiration behind this character's design. Albeit a little bit less grotesque. Let's see how he stands next to Batman. Slightly shorter, definitely a lot skinnier. Outside of Darkseid, Superman's the tallest figure in the lot. Here he is next to Superman. Yeah, it's a cool figure. Here's not retro. This is an old school 90s Batman by Kenner. It's part of their Dark Knight collection, I think it was called. And I love these smaller figures. They're pretty neat. I like lining them. I've said this before in other videos. I like lining up all my action figures like an idiot. Because I used to do this when I was a kid. When I was a little kid, I think I kept most of my figures. Like for some figures, like my Star Wars figures, I think I had a couple of those like carrying cases. And then for like some of my other stuff, I might have kept them in shoe boxes or like old school bags. And then I remember like as a kid, if my collection like grew past a certain point, I remember I'd always just like lay out all my figures on the floor and just like stare at them like an idiot. I'd always be amazed. I'm like, wow, look at all the figures I got. So it's cool. There's something very fun about these figures. And I love the smaller stuff. I don't know what it is. It might be because I'm burned out on like Marvel Legends a little, and I love the premium McFarlane stuff, like with the DC Multiverse, but man, they've been pushing out so many figures so fast. I can't remember any time during my collecting period when a company would push out, so many figures in 1 year. And I think the last 2 years, they've given us at first it felt like they're just giving us a lot of Batman figures, and they still do, but now it feels like they're just giving us a lot of everything. And it's coming out so fast that for me, it's easy to get burned out. And I think every now and then I just need a distraction. So I think that's the fun thing with these smaller like throwback figures. They're cool. I like these a lot more than like the reaction stuff. Like reaction's cool, but I kind of feel like that style of like Kenner Star Wars figures is kind of like, I don't know. It feels like it's overstayed its welcome, and I'm enjoying handling these superpowers kind of like action figures. In my perfect world, I'd like love if Hasbro didn't discontinue Marvel Legends, but if they gave us like sculpts and figures that felt like the old Toy Biz figures, not necessarily the Toy Biz Marvel Legends, but like the Toy Biz kind of like X-Men figures and Marvel superhero figures that Toy Biz produced in the early 90s. I think for me that'd be such a fun throwback. But I think Hasbro's toy strategy right now is, less toys, more like digital media or something like that. But it's cool that McFarlane's embraced, this kind of stuff. And, I think they really know their demographic. A lot of older collectors, like much like myself, gravitate towards, the nostalgia of these like iconic classic designs. So before we wrap this up, let's come back to this guy, the Batman Who Laughs. Wonderful action figure. All right, so this is where. All right, so I'm gonna like rate this guy on a scale of 1 to 10. Visually, this guy is a 10. I think of all the figures I've reviewed, he's probably the best sculpted, the most detailed, the most impressive. These points on his horns are really sharp. The amount of detail on his chest is crazy. He has the same articulation as everyone else, so that's fair. But like I said, I think the one thing that hurts him is that he doesn't feel like he flows like in this retro line. This feels like a figure that belongs like in a different toy line altogether. I feel like they could have dumbed down the design elements and make him feel a little bit more generic, just so he feels like a retro figure, or at least looks like a retro figure. But otherwise, this thing is top notch. Probably the most impressive looking figure of the lot so far. And it makes me even more hopeful for the figures we'll get in the future. They've impressed me so far with the first 2 waves. If they stick with the line, I'm really curious to see what McFarlane will do like a year from now. For example, if you compared like their DC Multiverse figures from like their first year to where they are now, like the differences in quality and in presentation, it's like the difference is like night and day. Like the first Batman they gave us, I think, was Detective Comics 1000 compared to like, Injustice 2 Batman. It's ridiculous how awesome the newer figures are compared to the older ones. Likewise, I'm kind of hoping that, if McFarlane sticks with the superpower stuff, for like the long term, I'm really hoping that, these figures just continually to keep on stepping it up, another level. And this guy is great. I really hope that this is a clear sign of where they're going. And it's kind of hypocritical of me to say that because, for one, I'm complaining that he's too detailed and he's not as generic as these guys. But, I do hope that, they break maybe away from the superpowers label and just give us figures at this size. Like, they're giving us those page punchers, those really tiny figures, but those are crap, to be honest. You're paying, like, so much money for a figure that doesn't scale with any other toy line right now, and I really think, they're doing a good job with these superpower ones. They're the right height at the right price point, and I just hope that they continue to stick with the line so I, could grow out my entire roster. For me right now, I think, as long as they could, like, complete the Justice League, that's the big thing. If they could do all of the, key villains like the Joker and Luthor, and, that lot, I think that'd be awesome. And once they start getting into like second tier characters, that's something I'm really hoping for. It'd be nice to get figures that aren't Superman and Batman. So, all right, so I'm running off on a tangent again. Let's wrap this one up. Once again, my name is Lou. If you're new to my channel, welcome. If you're a returning viewer, subscriber, thank you so much for your continued support. I greatly appreciate it. So, until the next video, be safe, take care of yourself, buy lots of toys, and most importantly, be happy. And I'll see you at the next one. All right, later.